Well, good morning. My name is Hal Mayer. Like I said earlier, I am a pastor at Grace Family Church. I'm actually over the young adults. But I will say this, it's kind of weird for me right now because it's been 4 months since I actually taught to a live audience. Everything's been, this is what's weird. Everything's been on video. And one of the things I've talked to people about, the hard part about video is I don't know if I'm funny anymore. And you don't know whether or not to pause because you tell a joke and you're like, I think it's funny, but if I pause and nobody thinks it's funny, they're just watching going, why is he pausing? That wasn't a good point. What's going on? And so, yeah, it's been weird during this coronavirus time. What's funny is I was actually supposed to teach the week that everything shut down here originally. I was going to teach and be a part of that, and Brian was going to go out of town. Little did he know everything was about to change. But, coming back now, and what's crazy about this whole coronavirus thing and all that, I have people come up to me all the time, and they go, Hal, are you afraid of catching coronavirus? And I always tell them, I'm not afraid of catching it. And that doesn't mean that I don't think it's real or anything like that. It's just that I'm not afraid of catching something I know I'm going to get. And here's what I mean by that. I have little kids. I have a 6-year-old and 2 3-year-olds actually turning 2 4-year-olds today. And at least once a week, I say this, stop licking the floor. Or the walls. Or their favorite is the sliding glass door. And it's just crazy to watch because they look around because they know they're not supposed to, and then they put both hands on the wall. And I'm like, what are you doing? The other day I caught them, they were chewing on their shoes, and I'm like, what are you doing? We're playing dog, and I'm going, why do you guys want to get me sick? And they're just looking at me funny. I'm like, I know, because you won't have any symptoms. They never do. The flu, all that kind of stuff, they just bring it home and give it to me. But so here's what's interesting. When I was originally going to speak back in March, we're talking about the same subject, and the subject was the battle for our mind. What we think, what our thoughts are. And I thought it was important back then. It's even more important right now, dealing with what's going on in our lives. What we choose to dwell on, what we choose to think about on a regular basis, what we choose to control our minds. And many times when we look at, our minds and the conflict that we have around us and our internal conflict, we look at many different areas, but I want to look at 3. And the first one that I think we give a little bit too much to is the enemy. When we look at our sources for conflict in our lives, our source of internal conflict, we look always, we look at the enemy, we look at Satan, and we go, the devil made me do it, or the devil made me think these things. And I'm not saying Satan's not real. He is absolutely real, and there are fallen angels called demons that are definitely there, and they do play a part in it. But most of the time, it's not him. See, he's not omnipresent. He's not everywhere. Most of the time, it's not him. There's other things that are going on. You see, you have Satan. You also have the world. And here's what I mean by the world. Is that me? Am I doing that somehow? Is it my beard? Sorry about that. It may be. But it's the world. And here's what I mean by that. It's the worldview that we have now. I mean, so much of the worldview today is you don't need anybody else. Everything you need is yourself. If you need to solve something, look within you. The key to getting out of your problems is to really find out who you are. And the problem with that is if it was up to us, we would have solved it already. But we do. We look at ourselves. We're constantly looking to man to solve our problems. That's why I believe in the United States right now, the biggest religion is not Christianity, it's politics. Because we believe we want somebody else to save us. And God doesn't work fast enough or in the way we want, so we look to man to do that. I mean, think about it. Even the very first sin, Adam and Eve, they were in the garden. What did they want? They wanted to take control. They wanted to know what good and evil was. They wanted to understand all those things. That's exactly what Satan went off of. He understood that we want to take control. And so when the world is around us, everything that's going on, we tend to go the wrong way. In fact, here's what's crazy. Every time you want to change your life, what happens? There's people around you. It's never the people you expect, but there's people around you that are against you. It's crazy to me. Every time I see somebody taking steps towards God, it's like they have family members or friends that all of a sudden are against what they're doing. And they have no idea why. They're like, I just want to make my life better. I mean, my friend Ryan growing up, I was a pastor's kid, and my friend Ryan started coming to a church with us when he was, I think it was 10th or 11th grade. And his parents did not like the fact that he was going to church. They wouldn't just straight say it, but they didn't like it. In fact, in order to go to church, they made him do chores in order to go to church. I was the pastor's kid. I don't think I would have done chores to go to church. But they made him do chores, and every time he came home or he did something wrong, they throw it back at him. They'd say, oh, is that what a Christian would do? Or is that what it means to honor your mother and father? And they would throw it back at him. And I know those are the things that still happen today. I see it all the time with the young adults that I work with and in the families. The moment they try to take positive change or move towards God, it's like there's this jealousy that kicks in with other Christians. And there's this other side of it with non-Christians where they just don't like where someone is going. In fact, when you decide to follow Jesus, there will be pushback. And many times what we need to do is this. We don't need to sit back and go, what am I doing wrong when there's pushback? We don't need to think, what am I doing wrong when I have problems in my life? Many times it's, what am I doing right? Like when it comes to following after Christ, most of the time when we're doing what God called us to do, we're going to have more pushback than when we're not. I mean, just look at Jesus. When he told everybody who he was and he did the miracles that he did, he didn't have everyone on his side. In fact, there was a lot of pushback, mostly from the religious elite. See, we have the enemy that can work against us. We have the world, but I think really the main thing is our nature, who we are. You know, who we are at our heart. It says, you know, when we become a Christian, we have this new self. We become a new person, but our old self is still there. It still is working against us. In the moment we try to move towards God, there's the voices inside our heads, the old self telling us what we used to be. And for the rest of our lives, there will be a battle in our hearts. And many times we don't understand that as Christians. We think, oh, I became a Christian, everything will be perfect. But no, you became a Christian, now there's a battle. There's a battle that we're going to face every single day. And there's a battle that we face and we constantly self-sabotage ourselves. We constantly put ourselves in the wrong situations, in the wrong places, and doing the wrong things, knowing that we will end up in the wrong place. Now, when I talk about the battle for our mind, when I talk about depression, there's a couple things I just want to make sure we understand off the bat. And there's some lies that have gone around in the Christian world. And it's this idea that if you believe in God enough, then you will never need medication. And let me just say this, that is not true. There's people that definitely need that, and there's people that need it for a moment. There's people that say, oh, if you truly believe in God, you don't need counseling. No, my wife has a shirt that says Jesus plus therapy. Like they go together. They are good things. But there's this idea, and I've seen it so many times where people say, oh, if you really believed in God, you wouldn't need that. And all it is it's giving them condemnation. They feel like they're not good enough. Or if you have enough faith, you will never feel bad. If you have enough faith, you will never go into depression. If you ever feel bad or you're in a bad place, it's because you don't have enough faith. The problem is when you look in the Bible, you see several stories that are the opposite of that. I mean, one that is very pertinent is the story of Elijah. Like Elijah was a prophet, and if you don't know what a prophet was not a good thing to be. Because basically a prophet was God told you everything everybody was doing wrong, and it was your job to tell the people. So you had to go down and say, hey, God doesn't like you. And none of the people were like, thank you for that. That's so awesome. Thank you. We love you. No, normally it was you told everybody, hey, God's feels this way about what you're doing, and he's going to he's going to come against you. And everybody's like, stone him. And so Elijah comes out and he says, hey, here's the deal. God doesn't like where you're going. He's talking to King Ahab specifically. This guy was an incredibly evil king. He says, God doesn't like what you're doing, so to make sure you get what he's saying, it's not going to rain. It's not going to rain for a while. In fact, it didn't rain for 3 years. And of course, at that time, Elijah had to go into hiding or everybody would have come against him. Well, God decides, he goes, all right, Elijah, here's the deal. I'm ready to tell everybody that I'm real. I'm ready to let everybody know how powerful I am. So I want you to tell them that the rain is going to come back, but I want you to show them my power. Because in that time, 3 years, no rain, nobody's sitting there going, hey, what do we need to learn? Everybody's going, oh, there is no God. Or they're worshiping another god. They're worshiping Baal or another one called Asherah. And so Elijah decides to set up this competition against the other gods. And so he goes out, and there's 450 prophets of Baal, 400 prophets of Asherah, and they all come together. So it's one person against 850 people. And the bet was this, is we're going to make an altar, and the first god that can cause it to set on fire wins. And so first off, Baal and Asherah, they set up the altar. They start praying to their God all day, all night. They're cutting themselves because back then, if you lost this kind of battle, you lost your life. And so they're praying to their God. And Elijah, I feel like, is a lot like me. Like he's just sitting there and he starts to make fun of them. Like he starts literally, it says this in the Bible, he goes, hey, maybe your God's on vacation. This is literally in the Bible. He goes, maybe he's going to the bathroom. Maybe you just need to wait. Maybe he's on his phone playing Angry Birds. Like, I don't know. Like, he's doing He's just not paying attention right now. You should get louder. And finally, those prophets give up, and Elijah's up. And not only does Elijah set up his altar, he puts the wood on there, but he makes a moat around it, and they pour buckets of water on top of it. He wants to make sure they understand who his God is. So he prays to God, and the moment he's done prayer, fire comes down from heaven and sets it on fire. Like literally at that point, everyone knows whose God is real. Elijah is so excited, he's so pumped, which I imagine anyone would be if you call down fire from heaven. He's so excited, it says that he runs to the city, which is about a marathon away. It's somewhere between 18 and 30 miles, depending on where they are. And it says he outruns the chariots. Guys, I can outrun a chariot for maybe 10 yards if they're not paying attention. Like he outruns the chariot. So you can imagine, he just ran a marathon. He just came off a spiritual high, emotional high, all this kind of stuff. He gets to the city, finds out that the queen doesn't like them, and that the queen is going to basically want to kill him, and all of a sudden, he hits this depression. Hits this serious depression. The man just called down fire from heaven, and one person says they want to kill him, and he goes into depression. So much so in 1 Kings 19:4. Says this, says, then he went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he may die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. He just called down fire from heaven. And in a moment's time, because he wasn't paying attention to his physical well-being, his mental state, his emotional state, he's in a place now where he's going, God, just take my life. Why do I say that? Look, there is no proof or no reason to believe that the reason you don't feel well in a moment or you have the wrong type of feelings, that means you don't have enough faith. It does not mean that you don't have enough faith. Many times it's our situations and what's going on. And many times, here's what's crazy. It's off the spiritual highs that we have our lows. When I've been on many mission trips. My dad used to lead a lot of mission trips into Cuba with just men. And before the trips, he would always do this, and I didn't understand it when I was a kid. He would take all of the wives aside and say, hey, here's the deal. When he comes back, there's going to be this need to fight. They're like, what? He goes, I don't know what it is or something about it. He's going to come back on this spiritual high this entire week doing God's work. All that, you're going to be at home with the kids doing your regular thing minus one person. You're going to be tired. You're going to be spent. He's going to come back on a spiritual high, but emotional and physical low. And all of a sudden, when you guys come together, he's going to say, you should love this, and you're going to be like, but the kids, and you're going to fight. And I remember thinking, that's so weird. But then we had really good friends who he had never been on a mission trip. He actually went down to Cuba, did this incredible work, helped this village out. All this was on an incredible spiritual high. He comes home. His wife has 2 kids and is pregnant and has been there the whole week. She's tired. She's dead. Literally, we get a text going, I don't think our marriage is going to make it, the day after he comes back from the mission trip. I'm like, what's going on? We go over, we talk through it. Nobody prepared them for it. He's going, but God did these things, and she's not understanding. And she's going, but the kids did these things, and he doesn't care. And what was it? Was anybody off base? Did anybody lack faith? No. It was they didn't understand the place they were in. He may have been on a high, but he was also very low. And he was walking into a place where she absolutely wanted to support him, but had been carrying the weight of 2 parents as one parent the entire week. See, we have to pay attention to where we are. It's crazy because in a culture that talks about self-care more than ever, we sabotage ourselves more than ever. We put ourselves in situations where we see the world for how crazy it is regularly. Through the media, through our cell phones, through social media, all these things. We continue to do those things knowing that all it does is it leads to more and more anxiety. Romans 7:15, this is Paul. I love this verse. It says, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. You know what's interesting? I've never heard somebody that went on a social media fast that afterwards went, that was dumb. I should never have done that. Right? They're always like, it was great. It was wonderful. And then they go right back open and open their phone, right? I mean, here's what's crazy. In a world where we know we should unplug so much, we just don't do it. There's this sense that we absolutely need it. I mean, I look back and I remember telling our young adults about this. I said, back when I was in college, my first year of college, I didn't have a cell phone. They're like, you didn't have a cell phone? I'm like, yes, I did not have a cell phone. It was okay. Like, I didn't have a cell phone. And if the only thing I had was a landline and our internet went through the landline, you remember that? Like, and if somebody picks up the phone, you're like, no. It's like 30 minutes into downloading one picture, and it's just, it ends. And I remember my parents would call me, and if they didn't get a hold of me, they didn't assume I was in a ditch. They just assumed I wasn't there. Or they assumed that if it was busy, I was on the internet, and it was perfectly fine. Now, we put trackers on kids. And I'll be honest, I'll probably do it too, just because I feel like I should. But it's that thing, it's like, man, I've got kids all the time that I talk to when I was in middle school and high school ministry. It's like, if your parents call you, you don't respond right away. They're afraid. They're calling the cops. They don't know what's going on. I used to go and play out and literally not come home till it got dark and everything was okay. See, so much of our anxiety, so much of our issues are things that we control. We can absolutely control, and we can actually choose to unplug. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the person next to you and say, traitor. You're like, wait, Hal, you're making this harder to go home today. No. They're not the traitor. You're the traitor to yourself. We are all traitors to ourselves. We are at war. Most of the time, we think we're at war with an enemy, but we're at war with ourselves. We're at war with our thoughts, and we don't even know how to fight the war. In fact, the way we fight the war is not in a good way. We tend to numb ourselves, right? We tend to numb ourselves. And we always talk about alcohol and drugs, and those are things that are absolutely real and still happen, but today it's so much more. For me, it's food. The Corona-19 was real. Like, it took the rest of Corona to take it off. But, like, my time is like, they're like, don't go to the store when you're hungry. For me, don't go to the store when you have anxiety. Because if I go to the store when I have anxiety, it's everything I want. Like, we're having cereal again, like the good kind, and whole milk. Like, I'm eating stuff. Like, my wife knows when I'm not in a good place because I'm in front of the TV eating bad food, watching The Office. Like, it's just, and that's what I do. And it's crazy. We will binge shows. That's become one of our newest ways of doing it. Here's what's crazy. During coronavirus, and this, I just still can't believe this, the #1 documentary of all time, the one thing that we think everyone should know about is Tiger King. Why? Because it came out at a time where people had incredible anxiety, didn't know what to do, and just wanted something to take their minds off what was happening. Guys, we do that all the time. Here's the problem. Whenever we choose to numb instead of deal with or heal, all we're doing is setting a trap later on. And every time we continue to numb and we continue to do those things, the trap gets bigger and bigger. Guys, if the enemy won't sabotage us, we tend to do it ourselves. Here's a crazy one. I heard these statistics, and it kind of surprised me, and it shows it just in the way that we fill and we take prescriptions. And look, I'm not one of those people that wants to drug everything. I'm not a fan of going to the doctor. I'm afraid they're going to tell me there's something wrong. And my friend's like, that's not a good reason not to go. Like, in my mind it is, okay? But here's the crazy part. When they talk about the stats of prescriptions, they say 1/3 of people will never fill the prescription. And then of that 1/3, that 67%, half of them won't follow the instructions on the bottle. Basically, the amount they're supposed to take, the full time they're supposed to take it, all that kind of stuff. It's the reason that we have super viruses now and all that kind of stuff. And, I hear that and I go, okay, but, I've been given a lot of prescriptions before. I just haven't taken them and all that. Here's what's crazy. The percentages are almost exactly the same of medication that fights off organ transplant rejection. So people that get organ transplants from somebody gave, the ultimate sacrifice, they passed away, they took the organ, they get a new organ. And they say in that same way, people don't take medication to fight that off. There's one instance that defies odds. There's one instance of medication and prescriptions that always are almost 100% used correctly, the right way, and always filled. It's when a vet prescribes it for our dogs. Fill it almost 100% of the time. Use it the right way. What does that say about our self-loathing? That we take care of our pets, and we want to take care of our pets more than we want to take care of ourselves. See, we've got to realize there's a problem. We've got to realize that a good bit of the problem is in our lives, and it's not something that just happens at once. Right? If anxiety, if craziness was just a singular thing, I think we would do okay with it. Like at church on Sunday, since I'm head of young adults, I usually have different responsibilities at different campuses. But normally I go on, I'm just basically like the fixer, which sounds cooler than it is. Like a fixer in a movie, like takes people out. A fixer in church, like takes out crying babies. So basically that's my job. Like I'm the person that like a kid is crying hysterically in the back and the mom just does not realize that's happening. I go and talk to them. Like if somebody stands up during the service and yells at the pastor, I'm the one that takes them out. Like we've had that happen. The air conditioner goes out, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm just cool, calm. I'm like, yep, let's get it done. But in my own life, when it's stuff that happens over time, when it's things that build up, I don't really pay attention to it. I mean, during Corona, we found out that our roof was leaking and I needed a new roof. On top of it, our HOA sent us a really nice letter about painting our house. And so I'm looking at that. The air conditioner went out in my truck. Literally, all these things happened like right away. And I'm like, this cost this much, and this cost this much, and this cost this much. And we're trying to figure out what we're doing with young adults and how we're doing online things and all that kind of stuff. And my wife comes in, and she can tell I'm overwhelmed because I'm sitting in front of the TV eating bad stuff, watching The Office. And she's like, hey, what's going on? I'm just, and I just kind of say, I was talking about something with the young adults, which wasn't the real problem, but it was the problem I was dealing with at the moment. And she starts to go, well, maybe we could do this. And I'm like, and I start making fun of the idea and talking down. She's like, why are you this way? Why are you so mean right now? And I'm like, yeah, your mom's so mean. What? She's like, did you just say that to me? I'm like, did you just say that to me? Like it literally, I reverted back to like a 3-year-old. And she's like, you need to go pray. And I'm like, you need to go pray. And so I did, though. I went off to my office and I prayed, and I had to come back and go, I am so sorry. But what was it? It was anxiety. It wasn't from like a momentary thing. It was the fact that I was allowing these things to build up. I wasn't talking about it. I wasn't praying about it. I wasn't allowing my wife in on the situation. So she had no idea what I was dealing with. It had nothing to do with the young adults and had to do with all the money that's going to be going into our house. But it was one of those moments where I had to go, all right, I have to decide to deal with this right now. I'm not going to be able to function if I don't deal with this anxiety. I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do. I need to focus on what's right, because when we're fighting this war, the enemy fights dirty. Proverbs 23:7 says it this way. It says, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Now, I'm not saying that every problem can be solved with mind over matter, but many problems start in our mind. Let me say this. We can change the way we feel by changing the way we think. We can change the way we feel by changing the way we think. Here's another way of saying it. Negative thoughts can't lead to a positive life. We can't constantly be thinking about negative things, focusing on negative things, and believe that our life will be positive in any way. It's kind of like batteries in a remote control. Like my son has problems dropping the remote. I don't know why it's just the remote, but I know that he does it a lot. And he'll come in and be like, the remote's not working. I'm like, did you drop it? He goes, no. And I'll open it up, and I'll see the batteries are put in the wrong way. See, if the batteries are put in the wrong way, there's no way for it to work, right? There's no way for it to work. There's no way for us to have a positive life if we're constantly focusing on what is negative, thinking about what is negative, and not looking for positivity. See, Colossians 3:1-2 reminds us, says, since you have been raised to a new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth. Think about the things that God wants us to think about. You know, nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, you know what, today I want to have a horrible day. We don't. Nobody thinks this morning going, you know what, I want to be negative today. Like we don't think, you know what, today I want to be consumed by worry. That sounds like fun. Nobody thinks that. But here's the problem, is that we're so focused on the negative that that's what we naturally do. Here's what's crazy about our bodies, that we have systems set in place that whatever we notice, whatever we think about, if we continue to think about it, our body rewards it. So like if we're thinking something negative and we see something negative, our body actually rewards ourselves for seeing negative things, if that's what we're focused on. So what we have to do is we have to realize this: we will find what we're looking for. We will find what we're looking for. And there's a difference between thinking and thinking about. See, we can't keep ourselves from thinking about something that's negative or something that's wrong. but we can keep ourselves from thinking about it and focusing on it and allowing that to stay in our minds. Because if we continue to think about that, we continue to allow that negativity to grow and grow, that worry to grow and grow, we will continue to think about it even more. It's something called the frequency illusion. You guys have all figured this out. You know that first time you get a new car, what happens? You see it everywhere, right? I remember when my wife and I got married, and she had this old Honda Accord. And immediately after we got married, I started noticing old Honda Accords everywhere. Were there more Honda Accords after we got married? No. I just started to notice them. Guys, when we look for the wrong things, we will notice it more, and our brain actually rewards us for it. So if we're looking for faults in someone, the more we see those faults, our brain actually tells us, that's good, keep doing that. Now, it's the same thing. If we look for things that are positive, we see good things, our brain will continue to do it. It depends what we're looking at. Here's how it goes bad. It's this idea that, I've heard people say this, well, everyone at work hates me. Everyone at work hates me. Everybody at work is mean. So what do? You focus on everything they say. If you could take it the wrong way, you do. Like, whatever they say, you look at, that they said something nice, but I know that's not really true. When they laugh at your jokes, you're like, well, that didn't sound real. Or they don't laugh, and that's even worse. Or they invite you to something or don't invite you to something. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, yeah, they invited me to this work thing, but I know they're just doing it just because they pity me. I'm like, wait a second. So if they didn't invite you, what would be your response? They're like, I'd be mad that they didn't invite me. But they do invite you, and what's your response? Well, then I'm mad that they pitied me. I'm like, so there is no good outcome. No good possibility. See, here's the truth. We have a chance to write our own story. We have a chance to choose what we're looking at and what we see. And we can choose to train our mind on what's negative and what's wrong, or train our mind towards what's Christ-like and righteous and holy and good. See, we need to remove the negative thinking, look at it positive thinking. And here's what I don't want to say. It's not positive thinking as a replacement for God. It's positive thinking as a response to God. It's not just these positive vibes. I see this on Facebook, and if I'm offending you, I'm sorry, but we need to hear this. I see this all the time. People go, I'm just sending positive vibes. What? Stop. That's weird. Like, I see Christians doing, I'm just seeing positive vibes. I'm like, no. It's called prayer. Pray. Like, positive vibes. It's not like you send positive vibes. I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, that doesn't, I'm happy now. Like, that doesn't work. Like, it's not just this idea of just being positive. It's looking at the universe, looking at what God's created, looking at all of what he's done and being positive because you know he's in charge. It's a very different idea. Because it's impossible to worship and worry at the same time. It's impossible to worship God and worry about what's going on around us at the same time. Philippians 4:8 says it this way. It says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. These are the things that we should think about. My old pastor used to say it this way. He says, you can't pout and praise at the same time. Right? You can't encourage someone and be critical of them at the same time. You can't look for the positive and go after the negative. The problem is we have so much of a negative bias in our lives that it's hard for us to start off the right way. And really, what we need to stop doing is stop trying to just stop negative thinking, and we replace it. In fact, that's what we see in the Bible, because when we just try to stop something, what happens? Something else comes into play. We don't need to stop it. We need to replace it. And when you look at all the habits that you see in the Bible, from prayer and reading the Bible to fasting and attending church and small groups, all those things are ways that God is allowing you to replace the negativity, the wrong things in your life, with something that is positive. Now, when we look at fasting, people always, look at the food thing first. But I think for us in today's world, fasting from other things would be much better. Like fasting from TV, fasting from the news. You're like, how will I know what's going on? Just ask someone. They'll tell you. They're freaked out too. Like fasting from social media. Like fasting from all these things. We have the ability to move those aside, replace them with the things that God wants us to focus on. Look, we have to realize every single day that we wake up that there is a battle going on. And we can choose to engage in that battle, or we can choose to allow it to take us over. We can choose to look towards God, or we can choose to look towards ourselves and what the world thinks. It's our choice. Let's pray. God, I just thank you so much for who you are. God, I thank you that you are a God that gives us that choice. God, I pray that as we go throughout this week, that we will choose to fight this battle. God, I pray that we would choose to get rid of the negative things in our lives that we don't need. God, allow us to shield those from our eyes, from our hearts, and from our minds. And God, I pray that we start to replace. We start to look at what you say about us, what you say about this world, and the fact that you're still in control. God, we thank you that even though this time is crazy around us, we have a God that we know we can trust in. God, we thank you for that today. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.